I'm J.R. Church. Welcome to today's analysis of the news. Well, today is Good Friday, the day upon which our Savior was crucified. And, of course, I realize there are debates about that, but I'm not here to debate exactly the day. I want you to notice something that happened on Passover. According to several sources, though the fall festival of Rosh Hashanah marks the first day of the new Jewish calendar year, Nisan, in the spring is actually considered to be the beginning of the annual festival cycle. The Jewish commentaries in the Mishnah tell us that the year of the reign of Jewish kings was counted from Nisan in Bible times. In fact, the traditional Jewish calendar gives us 4 New Year's days. First comes Nisan, the new year for kings. Next is the first of Elul, that's in August, the new year for animal tithes. Then there's the first of Tishri, new moon of September, for the Rosh Hashanah, new year for the civil calendar and for vegetable tithes. And then finally the 15th of Shavat, that would be somewhere in January, February. It's the new year for trees and fruit trees. Well, when our Savior came 2,000 years ago, He completed every tiny, minute detail of prophecy. In particular, His coronation as King was no mere metaphor. It was perfect and complete. This year, Passover and Easter come within 3 days of each other. Passover arrived yesterday on April 9th. This coming Sunday on April 12th is Easter. To the Jews, it's a time to celebrate the freeing of their ancestors from Egyptian bondage by Moses. But there's something even more important about Passover. It may be a little known, but it is an interesting fact that traditionally it is remembered by the Jews as the day when the kings of ancient Israel were crowned. Now think about this. Nisan marked the month of Passover, marked what was known as the New Year for Kings. One essay on the subject says, quote, "For reasons as yet unclear, the beginning of the year, reckoned from the spring by the early post-exilic community, came to be celebrated in the autumn in Judaism. The sounding of the ram's horn, shofar, figured prominently in the ritual of the festival held on Tishri 1 and 2, while the liturgy emphasized themes of judgment, God's kingship, and creation. Nisan 1 continued to be recognized as New Year's Day for the reckoning of the reigns of Jewish kings and for festivals. Thus, although the calendar year began with Tishri 1, Passover was regarded as the first festival of the year." This comes from a book called The Old Testament Essays, 1967 through 1998, Volume 1, Sheffield Academic Press, and published in 1998. So, we have the New Year for Jewish kings in Nisan. The Jewish Voice further clarifies this view. They write, quote, "How do we know that Passover is Rosh Hashanah for the kings? It is in the Tanakh, the Old Testament, though somewhat hidden. How do we know that the kings of Israel are crowned at Passover? Well, in 1 Kings, it says this, quote, "In the 4th year of Solomon's reign over Israel, in the month of Ziph, which is the 2nd month, that he began to build the house of Adonai." That's 1 Kings 6:1. It's repeated again in 2 Chronicles chapter 3, verse 2. The 2nd month of the reign of King Solomon, which means that Solomon was crowned the month before. So the month of Ziph is now known as the month of Iyar, which comes after the month of Nisan. There was a debate between the house of Hillel and the house of Shammai whether it was the 15th or the 1st of the month, but the 15th is Passover night and thus became the common understanding. Now get this. It was early in the morning when our Savior was arrested and brought before the Sanhedrin, and then before Pilate, and then before Herod, and back to Pilate again. The Scriptures tell us that the people cried, "Crucify him. We'll not have this man reign over us." But Pilate took Jesus and scourged him, and the soldiers platted a crown, though of thorns, It was a crown, and put on his head, and they put on him a purple robe, and said, Hail, King of the Jews! And they smote him with their hands. Pilate therefore went forth again, and said to them, Behold, I bring him forth to you, that you may know that I find no fault in him. Then came Jesus forth, wearing the crown of thorns, and the purple robe. And Pilate saith unto them, Behold the man. Well, they cried, Crucify again, and they cried out that he had made himself to be the Son of God. Well, this kind of frightened Pilate. So Pilate brought Jesus back into the palace and into the judgment hall and said, Where'd you come from? Jesus gave him no answer. Pilate said, Don't you know that I have power to crucify you or to release you? And Jesus said, You have no power at all against me. When Pilate therefore heard that saying, he brought Jesus forth, sat down in the judgment seat in a place called the Pavement, but in the Hebrew, Gabbatha. And it was the preparation of the Passover, about the 6th hour, and he said unto the people, Behold your King. And then he turned Jesus over to the soldiers for crucifixion, and Pilate wrote a title board and put it on the cross. And the writing was, Jesus of Nazareth, the King of the Jews. Well, the chief priest came to him and said, we'd appreciate it if you'd change that a little bit and say, well, he said I'm the King of the Jews. Pilate answered, what I have written, I have written. Jesus was recognized on his inauguration day as the King of the Jews by the Roman government. Not only that, but the crown he wore was made up of the same stuff of God's first curse upon planet Earth. Do you remember in Genesis chapter 3, verses 17 through 19? He said to Adam, Because you hearkened to the voice of your wife, and hast eaten of the tree which I commanded thee, saying, Thou shalt not eat of it, cursed is the ground for thy sake. In sorrow shalt thou eat of it all the days of thy life. Thorns also and thistles shall it bring forth to thee, and thou shalt eat the herb of the field, and the sweat of thy face, and so on. Please understand, when Jesus wore that crown made out of the same stuff of earth's first curse, the thorns, and Jesus' blood oozed out over those thorns, poured forth out over those thorns, Jesus took upon himself not only the sin of mankind, but the curse upon the earth as well. Ah, yes, he is King, crowned on the coronation day for Jewish kings. This was no mere exercise in futility. This was no mere mocking of the people. This was the coronation of Israel's king, recognized by the Roman government. One day when he returns, he will be wearing his crown. He won't need to be crowned or inaugurated at that time. He is already the king, not only of Israel, but of planet Earth as well, for his crown was made of thorns. Happy Easter. We'll see you again Monday with our analysis of the news.